Hello and welcome to this episode of the Collaborative Approach in Education. This week's episode is called Work Smarter, Not Harder, Simplifying Documentation in Early Childhood.
I feel like in our sector, we can feel really overwhelmed by the number of documentation, the amount of documentation that we just expected to do, we are expected to do, and sometimes we expect ourselves to, and maybe it's for a lack of knowledge, but not knowing what exactly is expected from us. And also I can see that, you know, some of the legislation out there, it doesn't actually state a number or what it looks like, what those expectations look like. So each center or each organization has their own expectations. But I feel like sometimes we make it harder than it should be.
100%.
I think that it ends up being there's no quality. There's this quantity of photos, and when say if you're doing an observation per month per child, I feel like then it becomes copy and paste.
Yeah.
So then when, as an educational leader, when you go back and read their observations and learning stories, they end up being, they're all the same, every child's got the same, and then there's like no intention, no quality.
It's not, you know, you might have a group story, but you can guarantee that every single child within that group probably got something a little bit different, you know, from that observation. And, you know,
there's also this misconception that we have to do a monthly observation per child in a room. And then say if you work in a kindergarten room with 30 children in there, you might have 50 children on your roll.
And then how are you supposed to follow all those up?
You know, and it's like you have to have the planning cycle met, so that it has to be an extension of each observation, and it just becomes an insane amount of work.
And considering how much non-contact, you'd basically need to be semi off the floor to be able to, you know,
execute it well.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think too, like when you, as long as it's informing your teaching, and I think that we, like, it's the same with like if a child comes 5 days and a child comes 1 day, like you're not going to have as much on that child that comes 1 day, and that should be the expectation.
And it is the expectation. If you speak to anyone from the Department of Education, it is.
Yeah. And like even as like a parent, I think that when you see a quality observation of your child, you sit there and go, oh, they really know my child.
Yes.
Like that's like, yeah, they love that, and you start resonating with it, and then, you know, you build that relationship with the parent, because it's like this relationship building with them.
Yeah.
But you know, I think realistically, even if you're doing one observational or learning story, not one of each, one or the other, per term, per semester, because it's the follow-ups that is where the magic kind of happens. That's where like the important part happens. And I feel like that's where educators aren't educated in that area. So they, you know, do an observation on building, and then their follow-up is building.
Yeah.
So, you know, why don't we spend more time on teaching them what's a good follow-up, like thinking outside of the box. Like, you know, if they're doing a building, let's look at architecture and, you know, the foundations of buildings, or, you know, things like that. But like, instead of just recreating what they already know, it's not extending. So they get caught up.
We need to be focusing on the development too, though. It's not, I think this is the other thing, is that because, you know, services are setting this expectation of one a month, we are getting those, Johnny's building. And so we'll extend on that by building or adding a couple more materials. But it's like, what is the actual development? What are we trying to gain from that? You know,
what's the learning disposition here?
Yeah.
Maybe it could be working on the learning disposition
rather
than the building itself. And I feel like, again, it's just like having leaders in the early childhood setting, that they are able to educate the educators about that, but because they don't know what they don't know.
Learning dispositions isn't really something that's touched upon in the training and stuff.
No, and they just added that now to the new version of the early years framework. So it's just something new. So I feel like there has to be that awareness. I used to do, like in my previous center, like workshops in regards to observations and things, and being able to identify beyond the thing. So it's like knowing that toy that they're interested in is just a tool to develop all the curriculum areas and all the learning dispositions that are there. So is it really about the blocks, the wooden blocks that they are learning,
Yeah.
or is it about speed, about architecture, engineering, being able to, to understand all these concepts. So, but then, like, again, I think it's up to the educational leader and the directors to be able to support the team in regards to that, because that's not something they learn.
Yeah, I think that's where the Cert 3 and 4 Cert 3 and diploma, does need a lot of like investigating into, because like, I think that is an area that it lacks in.
Massive.
And then they come in and they're so underprepared in that kind of thing.
And you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah, of course.
You really don't, but then often we do have educational leaders who also don't have that knowledge of dispositions and things like that too. So they, again, don't know what you don't know. So it's really, building your knowledge in those areas. And I think, with observations and stuff as well, we should be focusing on the things that the children can't do as well, and how you're extending upon that. If you've got a child who has a speech or language delay, how, write an observation on that. It could be a learning story that goes over a couple of months. You're saying,
I think it's really important to identify the difference between observation and a learning story too. Like, observation to me is more interest based, where a learning story is developmental. I find like learning stories are more of a developmental journey that you go on, and you could like literally have a learning story that goes from January to November, and you just keep adding your follow-ups. Like, they're now like, we've noticed a big difference now that there's an OT involved, and that we're getting extra information, and we've been implementing it, and this is what we're seeing. They could literally have an learning story that goes over the whole year, whereas your observations are more like that interest based, where you can pull the curriculum and put it together. And
I just don't think there's that training and understanding around those different things. Like, it's good that you've pulled that. Like, obviously, Danny and I've both come from New Zealand. Like, my training is in New Zealand, and learning stories are, were sort of developed in New Zealand, and it's learning stories were pretty much how we did documentation. And they could go for 3 or 4 months, as you said. It could go for the whole year, that that learning journey.
The project base.
It kind of links all together. And say, like, an observation could also go over like my teacher recently, they were doing marble runs in the classroom, and that project just totally blew up and went like she did so many things, and it came with gravity, and like I just couldn't believe what she did with the unit, like all the project, and like what those children got out of it as from science and mathematical and language, and like it was incredible to watch. And then the parents and what they've said, and they probably don't do gravity until like grade 5, but yet here we've got these little learners experimenting and going, wow, like having like really in-depth knowledge around something they're interested in, and it's really fun. It's like, it's exciting. Like, I always love, I've always sort of been on that Reggio approach of your project stuff, and there are things, we had one child who brought in a thunder egg from Tambourine Mountain, and that sparked this like 3 to 4 month long, learning journey that started from, the children were trying to decide what it was, and we discovered that it was, volcanic rock, and then it then sparked a thing about dinosaurs, and then how the dinosaurs died, and then it became came about space, because, a meteorite might have been how, it just created this massive journey. And like, I do a quick little write-up each day about how we'd extended on that. And I think that's where a lot of educators go wrong, though. Like, they think observation means that you have to document all the dialogue that's happened and every single little thing. Like you can literally put it into a paragraph and make it really short and simple. A lot of the time, the photo and the video will do all of that for you. But then it's the follow-up and the cycle, like the actual, assessment and learning cycle. How are you completing that? How are you, going through each stage? Because even the assessment learning cycle, I'm so stunned by how many educators go, like, what is that? That's it, it's done. And well, they don't know what it is. No, they just
think that, okay, we've done the analysis of learning and we've done a little bit of the follow-up, but that's it. And then, but there's so much more that could come from it.
But to still keep it simple. So like keeping it simple is like, you know, like just say it as it is, what you need. You don't need to
through the airy fairy how the day was. It was a beautiful day outside. Like you're not a weather presenter. You literally just the key points.
Yeah, definitely.
And I feel like a good way to start is like having a goal for that child. Like, you know, from observations, like I have in my group, I have a goal for each term, and sometimes if I feel like that goal from previous term wasn't met, and then I would extend on the next one, and then knowing how you're going to use those interests to follow up on that goal and develop. So that could be a good start, especially say if you are in a community kindy where you're just having those children for that year, so you're meeting them in that year, so it's like something that you can start working with a goal by the discussion with the families in the beginning of the year, and then you can develop your plan from there. But at least you have a focus to start, because I feel like that's where educators get a bit lost, because they're like, oh, what am I going to write about Johnny? Oh, yeah, he loves magnets. You know,
do
and
the
then,
same thing at the beginning of the year. It's like a settling one and just all the same, but then just a little like, oh, I saw them do this, so I'll put that was their interest and things like that. Like it's not meaningful. No. It's not purposeful, and you know, as you said, it's not driving that. You know, continue.
And I think as an educator, this is a really great opportunity for those who are listening, where they are doing one odd per month on each child, say because centre management has said that. This is a really good opportunity to have that meaningful conversation and, you know, have those robust discussions with your management team about how you feel about it. But you need to go in with
strategies, how you feel like
how it can be executed. Like, don't just go in and say, oh, it's too much work,
and give them the problem, give them a solution.
Exactly. Like I love it when someone wanted to put blinds in the room, and I said, okay, well, put like a business plan together and like sell it to me. So they had to look at the regulations of this or that. So if you're going in, because you're one of those people sitting there going, oh, I'm having to do one odd per month because I've been told by management, don't just go to them with, oh,
it's too much.
I listened to this podcast and they said, like,
you can do that though.
But like what I'm saying is go in with a really good strategy. Like go in with that you've thought about this at a deeper understanding. You've put a critical reflection together. Say you've spoken to the other educators about how they're feeling, like and what you're seeing. Like say it's educational leader, for instance. Like what kind of qualities coming out, and like highlight that for them before just going like, I want a Band-Aid fix.
And have some strategies and stuff. But as you said, you know, do a critical reflection on it, but really delve into what, you know, what the goal is. We're wanting purposeful, meaningful documentation. But how are we still meeting that planning cycle? You know, how, you know, because there's nothing worse than sitting there doing these observations and them having absolutely no purpose. Like it's such a waste of time.
And then on the other side, when you write something that it just resonates with the family and resonates with you, like I know that, you know, I'm a mom as well, and I remember back in New Zealand having the stories being written about my son, and the way the teacher described his interests in his learning, his personality in the story, it made me cry every time I read it, because I was like, she truly knows my child,
it's so powerful.
And then she was extending, and I could see that, like, wow, I know I'm a teacher, so I know what she was talking about, and it was familiar to me. And even the language she was using, because I feel like that's what it is true. Sometimes the teachers, like the educators, they are trying to use this really complicated language that when you're reading it, it's like it doesn't even make sense, you know, because they're trying to use this rich vocabulary that sometimes we might get it from ChatGPT, which I feel like it's an incredible tool. I use it, you know, I think it's amazing, and I don't even know what my life would be now without it. But I feel like it is like you go there and you can get some, you know, tips and strategies on how to do your observation from ChatGPT, but you do need to read it and make it sound like you as well.
And it's a tool, and I think this is where it's really important that you know, you've got different educators in your setting, and some might have like you might have one of your educators that have ADHD or some kind of like autism or something like that, where like an ADHD brain needs a lot of structure.
Yes.
But so, you know, doing the talk to text and then having something like ChatGPT, just like
to organize your thoughts.
And then you go back to it and so that, like, use it as a tool, but obviously use it with care.
Yeah. And if you don't know what ChatGPT is, because I just been to a conference actually, and the public speaker asked if people are familiar. Many people didn't know that, so I just assumed because like, we all know what it is. But if you go on Google and you type ChatGPT, it's an AI, which is an artificial intelligence, right? And then you just type in there and you can say, you know, write an observation about this child, blah, 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 and then that was doing this and this and that, and with your intentions in mind, and it'll give you an observation, and you can have a read, and it'll give you the right structure, and then you can just copy and then paste and edit the bits that you want to change in there. And it's seriously, for someone with ADHD, I don't have it diagnosed, but I feel like my brain works like that.
I think a lot of us do. I think that, like, when you look at the educators in childcare, we're very active and energetic people, so I think, like, you would find a lot of the people you work with do have ADHD.
Because they do, and I do have
organize your thoughts.
It does, and then the time that takes you to organize that, saving it,
keeps it concise.
So it's making, that's what it means when you work smarter and not harder. So you need to make it easier for you in that way. So it's not like you don't know, identifying what learning is. You do, like, you're typing in there, and you
still have to input those things in there for it to be meaningful and purposeful, because you can totally tell when it's just, input it in there and see, you do still need to have, be putting in there some of the, the actual learning that's occurred and things like that.
And and you still need to read it and see if it makes sense. And if there are words there that you don't even know what it means, you can change it to something that makes more that
is more meaningful
to you. So that they need to be able to, like, that's what I always did as well in with my teams. I didn't want them to all to have the same way of writing their observations. I wanted to be able to go there and read and know who was talking, so I could see, this was Mary and this was Janine, and this was, because I could tell by the way they were writing. So that's what you want to use. You want to use ChatGPT as a tool, but not to do the work for you, just to organize your thoughts, make it more structured in a way that you're writing it, so you can actually then later on read it, edit, and make it your own.
And I think we really have to emphasize this is you don't stop over documenting, stop doing too many checklists. Like, they have this
checklists and not. I hate checklists. It's so many.
It's literally you're ticking it off.
When it comes to documentation, I've said it in our educational leader podcast. Like, checklists I feel don't have a place. They do when it's like you clean the bathroom. Documentation, like, you do not need a checklist. And I think that's when you see children as a number rather than a person. And that's when we're creating this,
in the box kind of.
In the box. And this is where, you end up going, right, you have to do this and this and this and this. When you're working off a checklist, because you're not thinking outside the box.
Well, it's not a holistic approach.
It's not a holistic approach.
So it's, really looking at the child as an individual and, also focusing on their strengths and trying to build on those strengths, something they're really interested in, build on it and show them, like, wow, you're so capable. Like, it's so important.
And I feel like, another way of working smarter and not harder in regards to that, like, so say, first of all, we know that there's no expectations from the department that says that you have to do one observation per month, otherwise you get a working towards assessment that doesn't exist, So all they want to know is if you're making your planning cycle visible and evident, and you need to have a plan.
Explain that.
And you can explain that
so
properly.
So if they came around and asked you a question about it, you actually understand it, and you have a deep knowledge on that.
Yes, exactly. And I feel like, so then that, so that's established. You know that you can use ChatGPT to help you write and put your thoughts, organize your thoughts.
Obviously, different services have different rules around that.
Yes.
Obviously,
check if you are
whether you're allowed to
do that, for sure. But I think also, for example, I know that that's something that we always get overwhelmed by the documentation, because usually like educators, I feel like they are more artistic too, you know, they're a bit of more, they don't like documentation as much. So another tool that actually Katie shared with us, and I love it, I've been using it, you know, all the time, is that Coconut app.
Or TurboScribe is a free version, free one as well.
And then, you know, which is just, it's an app that you can use for your meetings with your educators in the classroom as well.
Organize your thoughts.
Or, you know, to organize your thoughts, like having a meeting with a parent, and then you can say, look, I'm just recording this for us to take notes. There you go. That's the evidence of your...
working smarter.
You know, work smarter, not harder. Like you're getting an AI tool to support you on that, and taking the notes for you, so it's saving you the time from
your actual words too.
Yes,
like
it is.
It's not, you're not actually input anything other than your words.
Yes, it's just letting technology do the work for you in that way. And I feel like it can be overwhelmed for people that have been in the sector for so long, but it can be so
the important thing about this is so that we can spend more time with the children, be present with the children. So like I think when we talk about doing less, it means that we can be there more. So, and that's what the goal is when talking about documentation and working smarter and not harder.
Yeah, and I think, you know, one of the things that I hear quite frequently is, you know, the parents are wanting this and things like that. And I've always said, you create the monster. You know, it's about educating our families about it. You know, there was something come up on Facebook the other day, and it really, you know, this parent was saying that they were going to pull their child out of the centre because they weren't getting this each day, and, you know, the other centre they'd come from. And I'm going, look, as someone who's worked in the sector for over 16 years as a teacher, I you know, I shared my thoughts on it, you know, but then I also said, you know, as a mother, I understand, like, you know, the centre that my children are in, they use the Roseway. So I don't get documentation. I don't get photos every day. You know, the observations and stuff often I don't get to see, like it's all sort of done holistically. However, I know that my children are like, the educators are involved and with the children always. And, you know, I sort of said, you know, we're not the paparazzi. We're not there to take photos of children all day. That takes us away from the actual, you know, interactions with the children and the learning. Well, because when you
think about it, like, children are like seeking connection, especially in this day and age. So the more that you can connect with them, because life is busy at home, I think that's like a really important part of their well-being.
And I'm pretty sure that if you do ask your parents that, do you prefer having photos every day of your child, or that they're having really strong connections with the team? I'm sure they're gonna prefer the second option. So but I do know that different centers have different expectations. But I feel like, again, it's up to you working your case and being like, look, how about if we just do a critical reflection on this, you know, a self-review, and just trying to see how we can improve this, or maybe we can do, like, start doing a weekly summary, like this is what we did this week, or
that's what we,
you know, or doing something like that, so you can slowly move on from that expectations. I know changes are hard, but sometimes it can be for the better. And I always feel like changes are for the better anyway. So
and it does come down to educating our families on what we do and why we do it.
Yeah, definitely. So I think in conclusion, it's really about having those robust conversations if you feel like you're over documenting.
Yes.
You know, doing a critical reflection as a team and pulling it apart. Who are we doing it for? And that sort of thing. And then, you know, put it into your quality improvement plan, that it's a progressive thing that you're changing. And, working towards working smarter and not harder.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us on this week's episode of the Collaborative Approach in Education. Join us next time for more insightful discussions. Until then, keep inspiring young minds. Please follow us, like and share on Instagram and Facebook. If there are any topics you'd like us to discuss, please let us know in the comments below.